Done. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Today we're talking about courts have ruled that the medical marijuana card holders cannot buy a firearm. I hope you join Mel and myself in this live conversation. Mel, anything you want to start adding to the conversation there?
It's interesting when you start taking away Second Amendment rights, for whatever reason, like I said, once you take away Second Amendment rights, does it go into First Amendment rights? I mean, what
Yes.
happens next? Do you just throw away the whole Constitution, Bill of Rights, do we just change everything altogether, So it gets dicey.
I agree. 100%. I'm not sure if we're live yet. May have to check. I may have to check. I'm still typing out the title here for the live stream info.
Yeah, so that's what it is. Hopefully, because I mean, if people need to hear my soliloquy again, it's okay. I think you're live. You're live.
It appears to be so.
You're live.
Good.
No, you are live. You are live.
Awesome.
You are live now.
It's saying I have to smile for a thumbnail.
You are live. Forgive me, I'm in the chat right now, so
I see the top chat. Wow, this is a whole new ball game, man. It's pulled up on the side here.
Oh, wow. You didn't know?
Oh, this is different. This isn't. Yeah. I don't know which one's live though. This one to the right or this one to. I think we might be live streaming on two different applications. That's different.
yeah, no, it's definitely.
I'm gonna have to find the chat now because I was hoping the top chat would be over here on the right. Is anybody in the chat?
Yeah, no, people are in the chat.
Yeah, I see a couple of thumbs up and stuff. But
yeah, you got Country Farmer, Minuteman, Homestead. You got the Click, and
awesome.
You got yours truly here. Yeah. It's gonna take time for people to come through. Some awareness and whatnot. We're not dispensing marijuana. But we are talking about it.
Exactly. But we're talking about the rights. I mean, when the courts ruled that medical marijuana card holders can't buy a firearm, I think they're taking away a Second Amendment right, and the correlation between that. You know what I mean? Like they haven't committed a felony. I understand there's the legal there's that legal problem with states approving it and federal not approving it. You know what I mean? So there's that dilemma there. But you had the Fourth and Ninth Circuit Supreme Courts who fought over this. And their reasoning was just unjustified in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if the 420 community would have got on board and pushed this, I think it wouldn't. I still find the causation, because causation is a big word in legal terms, because they're using the causation between offenders who are imprisoned currently, or past tense, and their drug use, because marijuana is still considered a drug. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Alcohol is a drug. Tobacco is a drug. So let's say next thing they want to push for is to take away our freedom of speech, our First Amendment, because we are drug users if you use tobacco or alcohol. Because if you get caught selling it without a license, there you go. You know what I mean? That's why there's the ATF, alcohol, tobacco, firearms.
Yes. ATF are dangerous out there. You see the ATF coming, you better run. Don't try to be a hero.
They've shut down poor little, communities even out in California. There's some other ones who sell whole milk, unpasteurized.
They don't take away your Second Amendment rights for whole milk. You know what I'm saying?
That's right.
Cows everywhere will be relieved.
Oh, can you imagine?
Yes, I could. Like, give out a moo right quick. That's oh my God.
I have to find the live chat here. I was hoping I see Margie Yeamans.
Sorry about that. For
Mangie Yeomans. She says, hi there. Different view.
For those that don't understand what causation means, causation is the act or process of causing. The role of heredity in the causation of cancer. B, the act of agency which produces an effect. in a
Right.
complex situation, causation is likely to be multiple.
Yeah,
Causality. Yeah. So
exactly.
just for people that don't understand what causation means,
Yeah,
you know.
when the court ruled 3-0 on that Wednesday that they would ban the preventing medical marijuana card holders from purchasing firearms. They said it was not in violation of the Second Amendment. The Associated Press, the Washington Post, everybody, basically wrote about this or said something about it, but most people didn't hear about it, didn't see about it, or didn't understand it. And then there are the nine Western states under the appeals court's jurisdiction, including Nevada, where the case originated.
Hmm.
It's pretty crazy. Now, I know a lot of people, I'm waiting for somebody to say, oh, it's Trump, blah, blah, blah. I'm talking about something that happened in 2016.
Oh, it's Trump. It's the last time that.
You know what I mean? I'm waiting for
That's.
people to be like, oh, no. You know what I mean?
Oh
But
no.
yeah, but a lawsuit was filed in 2011 by the Nevada resident S. Roland Wilson after she tried to purchase a gun for self-defense and was denied based on a federal ban on the sale of firearms to users of illegal drugs.
Hmm.
Though marijuana has not been legalized in some places on a state by state basis, it remains illegal under federal law. The courts,
Well, let's go back to causation. The
yeah,
causation of it all.
yeah, I'm
What the
getting to that.
causation? What they? Well, okay, then I'll stop. Then I'll stop.
Okay. The court mandated that drug use raises the risk of irrational and unpredictable behavior with which gun should not be associated. Now, with all that said, Wilson claimed that she doesn't actually use marijuana. She simply obtained the card to show her support for its legalization. The appeals
Hmm.
courts agreed with the guidelines from the Federal Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms and Explosives that firearm sellers should assume that medical marijuana card holders use the drug, even though she clearly said she didn't. Chaz Rainey, the attorney representing Wilson, said that he plans to appeal the decision. We live in a world where having a medical marijuana card is enough to say you don't get a gun, but you're on a no-fly list. Your constitutional rights is still protected. He told the AP, if you guys don't know what the AP is, I'll explain what that is. He argued that there should be more consistency in how the Second Amendment is applied. I have to agree with that. Alex Criet, the marijuana law expert at San Diego Thomas Jefferson School of Law, I don't know if you guys have ever heard of him,
Hmm.
um,
Yes, we have.
expects that the ruling won't be the last we see of the issue. He told the AP that ruling may be challenged by people who use medical marijuana, who will argue that they shouldn't be lumped into other drug users in terms of concerns about violence.
Well, I mean, like I said, you have a choice. Your firearms or the joint. Do you want to spark a fat one, or
Right.
do you want to pop a cap in that intruder? You got to make a choice. If you want to smoke a big spliffy, you got to
Well,
be willing to let the intruders in.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I think, I mean, when it comes to defense, I mean, the Second Amendment should not be impaired or under any circumstance. Basically, I think that once you start taking away people's rights, and we're slowly degrading our whole Constitution and our amendments and the Bill of Constitution. I mean, everything's just kind of degraded over the years. They just kind of picked it apart. And with that said, I'll say this: if the First Amendment applies to radio and TV and the internet, and the Fourth Amendment covers electronic wiretapping and video surveillance, how can the Second Amendment only apply to 18th century firearms technology? You know what I mean?
Mm. Yeah, yeah.
I'm not being fooled by what they're trying to accomplish with those things.
Oh, they're trying to make a new world. It's a
Yeah, I
brave
mean,
new world, you know.
and I know some people may be like, oh, this may be new to some people who's heard this, but this debate has been going on since 2016. Technetic Beats, welcome. 57 Red Rooster, welcome. Drive Shaft Drew, you're always welcome. Big Gaz, you're always welcome too, guys. All you guys, everybody in the chat, welcome, welcome.
Well, I mean, everybody's welcome to chime in. Like I said, if you want to spark one, then Second Amendment rights are no longer for you. Get used to it. 420 community, I would love to know how you feel.
That's where I'm at with it. I want to find out how the 420, how as a drug user, if it's considered a drug in your opinion, because I mean there's there's a time when alcohol was banned in this country. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well,
And before the turn of the century, marijuana was the most prescribed drug for pain. They gave it to
mm-hmm,
women for childbirth.
mm-hmm,
I look at it under the demographic analysis as far as, if you're holding a medical marijuana card,
yeah,
then why are they discriminating against you, right? Let's call it discrimination because, I mean, whether it's race, age, sexual, gender, orientation, geographic area, or religious affiliation, it's still discrimination. You're taking somebody's right away because of something.
mm-hmm. Well, yeah. I mean, you are, but hey, some people feel like it's in line, with their, political correctness or their standard, what I'm saying? So they consider, marijuana a drug because of the THC,
Mm,
infused inside of the
right,
plant or whatever.
right.
Because for those people that know about marijuana, they know without the, THC, it's really not the same, it's not the
Right,
same substance,
right,
you know.
exactly.
So that changes the game.
I think Big God's made some points there. He says constitutions are being trotted all over the world. The people are the only ones who can change that. If they don't, then it will get worse. I have to agree.
I
Technity,
agree with Big
Technity,
Guys.
yeah, Technity Beats brought up some important points there. Papa Texas, he's in the house. Hey, Papa.
Hey, Papa Texas, the legend.
Papa, you're welcome to join this chat. You're already in the hangout if you can find it. You're welcome to come up on board.
Yeah. Welcome to Papa Texas.
If
Welcome to
if
everybody,
you,
dog.
if you
Not
go
everybody.
back and you really research some of the reasons why marijuana is actually legal, I mean, it doesn't really have to do with any of the fundamental Christians that had to do with over powerful politicians, and just owning that majority of of the political landslide. Let's just call that a land or landscape. But I mean, if you go back to even like the lumber mills in the United States, they were at risk for losing that paper business due to hemp growers. Because I mean, hemp's the strongest natural fiber known to man. We were talking about the THC in marijuana. Which side is what's sterile, what's going to get you high. I mean, there's two different things there.
Hmm.
I don't think in any circumstances anybody's rights should be taken away unless you've been convicted of a felony. Now, I understand if you fill out a federal form to buy a gun from a certified, registered gun shop or whatever, you have to check whether or not you do illegal drugs. You know what I mean? And at
Yeah,
that
yeah.
point, you're committing a crime. Now, is it a felony? You haven't been
Mhm.
convicted yet. When you take someone's rights away before they've been convicted of the crime, now we're talking, guilty until
It's
proven innocent.
well,
That
it's a
change,
new
that
world. It's a new
changes.
world order. NWO.
Yeah. Well,
New,
I
new,
mean,
new world order.
theoretically, I mean, across the world, that it's happened throughout time. When they take the guns, we have no way to fight back. Period.
When they take the weed, we have no way to fight back.
Well, I don't know too many weed smokers who are fighters. You know what I mean?
CV, what's going on, fireman? Speak up.
How you doing,
Do you
buddy?
want the firearms or do you want your guns? I mean, do you want your firearms or do you want the weed?
Both.
You want both.
Right.
So you want to get your Charlton Heston on and you want to get your Cheech and Chong on at the same time.
Well, here's the thing. I'm a stroke survivor. I've survived 2 strokes, and marijuana doesn't get me high.
Okay.
It eases the neurological pain. If you look up the medical benefits to stroke survivors,
Mm.
and somebody made a comment in the chat that a lot of people do it just to get high, and it ruins it for people that are using it for medicinal purposes only.
Right.
Mm, this is true. This is true. All these
There,
things are true.
yeah, there is a recreational use and there is a medical use for sure. But I think that to limit both of those people, to lose an amendment, to lose a right, a right to defend themselves. You know what I mean? If think about if you're a smart criminal you go to a marijuana dispensary in one of those states and you follow those people home because you know that they can't defend themselves with a gun, who are you going to rob? Someone who has a gun or somebody who doesn't have it? Now that they can't defend themselves.
See, here's one thing that nobody addresses, and not normal people that don't have firearms or don't have a license to carry, like myself, are not aware of the loopholes. There's still loopholes in existence. Let me give you an example. You can be a convicted felon. You can buy a 50 caliber weapon. Anybody that knows anything about firearms knows how big of a hole a 50 caliber firearm will leave compared to regular bullets. A 50 caliber firearm will leave a hole the size of a softball or a basketball in somebody's chest, one bullet, and a convicted felon can easily obtain it without going through all the mumbo jumbo and the bull crap of paperwork, which I do not agree on. And yes, I do have a license to carry. I don't like that loophole at all.
I mean, yeah, but I mean, I guess for me, it's the intention of it all. Why now? You know what I'm saying? Why now? Why marijuana? Why now? Why this? You know, that's what I wonder about.
Well, it's still unregulated. I mean, they're getting the taxes now that, you know, those states that it's happening in. The federal they're seeing, the states are definitely seeing benefits. You know, we're talking about financial benefits for it.
I mean, this has to be about money. I mean, it has to be. I mean, because when you talk about places like Colorado, you know, I mean, they're like multi-million-dollar businesses springing up out of nowhere.
Businesses, and they're not allowed to put their money into a bank. If you have a dispensary or you are a grower, the funds that you receive, you're not allowed to put into a bank. So you have to house that money yourself in some way, some shape or fashion. Because if you put it into a bank, it can be seized at any time. Because once again, it's still under federal law; it's illegal.
Yeah, I mean, there's that. But like I said, you know, there's some people that have to rise up, you know, rage against the machine, because right now they're trying to change the game in the knife end, and it doesn't make sense other than the fact that they want to take control and they want to take resources and tell people how to live even more than what they're already doing.
Right. Totally agree. You know, the video is kind of inspired by Granny Monster. She made a video the other day explaining the 420 community and something I already knew about the Waldos and stuff, because you know I think if somebody wants to smoke a cigarette, they can do it legally. Should they lose any rights for it? No. If somebody wants to drink and do it responsibly, should they lose any rights for it? No. If they want to do a drug which is not what I would consider on harming themselves compared to some of the other drugs that are out there. I mean, even a prescription drug. More people are addicted to prescription drugs than marijuana. You know what I mean?
Well, listen, I'm gonna tell you like this: if they start taking away Second Amendment rights for people smoking cigarettes, all hell will break loose. That's when Armageddon is coming.
I agree with that. I agree with that.
Look, Morris will be out in the streets. The Marlboro man is gonna riot.
Yes, I have to agree, because that they can't make a cigarette any more addictive than it is. There's so many chemicals in a cigarette from the whole manufacturing process.
But you know what's going to happen, right? Though they won't stop with cigarettes. They're going to go to alcohol as well.
Yes.
You know.
Can you imagine if you get convicted of a DUI that you can no longer have your Second Amendment right? You can never buy a firearm.
Yeah. So now you have a situation where, you know, you have that fifth of Hennessy. Now all of a sudden you can't brandish your firearm, which I'm not saying you should. Don't get me twisted. But let's say you get drunk and get a DUI, like you were saying. Right. Now all of a sudden you lose your Second Amendment rights.
Or a public intoxication. Maybe you get one of those tickets.
Yeah. Then it turns into something else, you know.
Right. Because if you give that inch, they're going to take a mile. No questions.
The government? No, they would never do that.
You know, I find it amazing how much we actually let them get away with it, because they're not transparent like they should be. You know, they group all these bills together.
Yeah, and if you question, even thinking of questioning it, you become suicide all of a sudden.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Of course, of course. Like it goes into government overreach. Like it
Yes.
just it turns into something else. This is, I mean, because me normally, as far as the marijuana thing, I could care less. No
Right.
offense to the 420 community. However, I know once it starts with marijuana, it goes into something else, and then it goes into something else, and then it goes into something else.
Right.
Just like
So
firearms.
Yes.
exactly, yes,
Yes.
so if it's not, it doesn't start, it doesn't stop at one thing, because what happens is it starts with a legal precedent. If you use one thing as legal precedent, now you're in the Supreme Court, and decisions and everything are being changed around based off of
Correct.
one decision.
Right.
Correct. Absolutely. And if you take people's firearms away, you infringe upon their Second Amendment rights. What's to say they're not going to go after our other amendments? You've got to look at it
I
that
spoke
way.
about that
Even
earlier.
our
Yes,
first,
yes.
even our
But
First Amendment, right?
all people see is, oh my God, get rid of the guns, get rid of the guns, get rid of the guns.
Yeah.
If they get rid of the guns, they're going to target some other crap on us.
Yeah. I think it's time for the feds to remove the cannabis from a Class A narcotics list. It's a waste of natural resources. I mean, think of all the people who are imprisoned right now for just that.
They can't make any money off of it if they make it legal. That's the problem.
Well, I agree with that, but I think there's more dangerous drugs such as like meth and opiates that are out there, and
But
even
that's
with
easier to regulate. Those things are easy to regulate. Look at all the methadone clinics around the country.
Thank you.
You know,
Thank you.
you know.
right
So it's much easier to regulate with marijuana. How do you regulate marijuana?
tax stamp, the same thing they used to do with cigarettes.
No,
I'm
but you
sorry,
can't.
Myrtle. Uh,
You can't.
you can't. It's so many ways to do it. I mean, you can ship stuff overseas, and you can have something in your house. You can have illegal growing stations inside, your apartment. I'm in the projects. I can have an illegal growing situation up here. How do they know?
Right. If you're in another state, such as where Mel and myself are at, right now, I'm not there. Right now, where I am at, in the state that I am,
Right.
I can stand next to a police cruiser, spark up a joint, blow the smoke. He can smell it, and he can't touch me. He can't do a damn thing. I
Right.
can grow it in my own backyard where I am right now, and they cannot touch me. But if I go to New York, don't try it in New York. So the thing is, they can't regulate it because the government can't. If you grow it in your own backyard, they can't keep tabs on it. They can't make money on it. That's where it becomes a problem. Whereas if it's illegal, they make more money from it.
Well, I think here's the underlying thing. When I say that, how they can regulate it with like a tax stamp, it's the wrapper that it's in. We're talking about like a cigarette paper that would have basically a label on it. We're talking about like a cigarette with a filter. You know what I mean? Marlboro has a warehouse that I've seen full of marijuana cigarettes. And the crazy thing is, no offense to my Canadian brothers that are here, visiting this live stream, but all of the medical marijuana that's grown for the United States is all grown in Canada. So it's taking jobs away from Americans. You know what I mean? They could actually be growing it here instead of shipping it across, country to country. I don't know. I wouldn't even get into that part of it. That's crazy. I'm more offended by the point that they think it's okay to take an amendment from someone who hasn't committed a crime, has not a felony crime.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's so much about that. I think it's so much about, the fact that they're trying to make people, have to deal with certain ultimatums and cause infighting amongst people, and have you to make decisions on what you want to do, which is more important to you.
Right.
Are you going to choose the guns, or are you going to choose the medical marijuana or marijuana of any type? I think they're kind of setting you up in that regard, So
They're trying to divide us.
Exactly. There you go. There's a division. And the saying, if we want to go back to Abe Lincoln, how it says, united we stand, divided we fall.
Correct.
So there's going to be people who are on the side of marijuana. There are going to be people who are on the side of guns. And there's going to be those people, who just want to protect the amendments, the Bill of Rights, the Constitution, all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the people that want to tear it down, the anarchists. So there's all these different factions. But I tell anybody, when you look at these things happening, always look at who stands to profit from these, particular things going on, be it the big corporations or, other outside organizations that you're not even thinking about. Are you still there?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. I'm just
I have to agree, but there's a point that some people are missing. Do you remember the old saying, shall not be infringed? Those rights shall not be infringed.
The problem is everybody likes to take it out of context. And especially, and I'm not making fun of the leftists or any liberals or anything like that, but the first thing that comes out of their mouth are these snowflakes. Well, we don't live in the 1800s anymore. And it, that just makes your blood boil. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Did you hear what I said earlier? The statement that I made?
I didn't. No, I'm sorry.
That's okay. I think if the research was done per drug, depending on the drug that's there, I think that would have more of an effect as far as what causation. If you go back to considering cigarettes, considering liquor, also in these drugs and marijuana, and let's get into the opiates, let's get into the heroin, let's get into all those things that let's break them all down and see how many deaths, how many overdoses, how many suicides have been caused by each one of these things. Because I see people in suits selling poisons and paying politicians to vote their way.
Correct.
You know what I mean? Let's change that. Let's see a legal death causation drug that gets banned. You know what I mean? That a company can't push to make $1, and then 2 years later there's a class action lawsuit about that particular one.
With all the lobbying and the money, soft money in politics, good luck with that.
You're right.
I
think when there's that bribery, let's just call it what it is. When you're giving contributions to the to get your way, I think there's a point where in this country, as Americans, I think we need to look at it as treason. You know what I mean? Like. If you're taking a bribe that's going to hurt people in the long run, you're committing treason. If you're not upholding it correctly, if you're not doing it right.
Let's go back to that treason thing. Okay, yes. Define treason. Does that mean if you go against the Constitution, that's treason? Yes or no?
Well, I have to preface that, but I'll let Myrtle go first.
Let me say one thing: shall not be infringed.
Mm-hmm. Right.
You uphold the Constitution. You swear an oath to uphold that Constitution. When you infringe upon that Constitution, is that or is it not considered treason?
When you're a legal representative, whether you're a state actor, let's call them Congress, whatever, police officer, whatever position you're in, at that point you've made an oath, a declaration of oath to protect it. And when you go against it, then you are committing treason at that point. But unfortunately, most of those people don't understand that because they didn't study the law part of it. They want the other side of it.
You just offended a whole bunch of people.
I know, unfortunately.
Not to interrupt, but Dark Matter made a very valid point. You are running 2 live streams, just to let you know.
Yeah, I knew that. I was aware. I didn't. That's why I was saying earlier, I was like, how did that happen? I was checking it out. I was like, wow, I got 2 going at the same time. I was telling Mel.
So much rebel. It's not enough rebel to go around.
I guess there is now. I don't know, man. That's weird.
Well,
are you familiar with the term CBD?
I am.
Yes.
Absolutely. As a stroke victim, of course I am.
Right. Because I remember
out there that don't know.
Yeah. You want to explain it?
Me? Explain it?
Yeah.
A lot of the CBD, they call it CBD oil. Basically, without getting high, you get the benefits of marijuana. And it can be prescribed medicinally.
Right.
Shit, I can't even talk. Sorry, I shouldn't have sworn. My bad. But basically, you don't get the high from it, but you reap the benefits from it.
Right.
That's the bottom line. And a lot of people do that. And marijuana is used for a multitude of different medical symptoms, all the way from bipolar, people that have ADHD, stroke victims, neurological problems. The list goes on and on.
All of our founding fathers grew marijuana for the war effort. Because like I said earlier, it's the strongest natural fiber known to man, period. The fact that we don't use it, the hemp, for, there's been arguments about whether the Constitution, because there's like 7 of the original constitutions. I've seen some of them in person in in Philadelphia.
Yeah,
They have
yeah,
one
yeah,
on display at their Independence Hall. But
yeah.
some debate whether it's on hemp paper, parchment, or if the oil was used was hemp, because Ben Franklin, who's buried right there beside Independence Hall, his grave's right there, right down the street, right on the corner, basically. Seen his grave. He had a hemp paper plant there at one time. We're talking something that's old. I mean, hemp or marijuana grows everywhere on this planet except for one place, and that's the South Pole. That's it. It grows everywhere else naturally, and it can. There's not too many plants that can actually do that either. Under the religious, since the United States decided to step away from the separation between church and state, if it's your religious belief that you should smoke, right? Now they've infringed upon your rights there also. You follow where I'm going with that?
I mean, I follow where you're going with that. I mean,
Right.
but then it's like, how serious will people take that as it stands in America? You know what I mean? I mean, maybe somebody like Snoop Dogg might get into that, but I don't know. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Silence.
But no, I mean it's just a matter of preference. I mean, anything can be considered a how should we word it? A legal conscious. You can be all right. Let's go back to the objector. Let's go back to legal a conscientious objector. All right. So let's say you have a medical marijuana card. You're from one of those states where it's legal. You're 18 years of old. You're basically what is that called? The where you don't enlist, but it's the registration. What's it called?
Yeah. I know what you're talking about. Selective service.
Selective service. You're registered with selective service. You're 18 years of old. Now, let's say a war breaks out. No, it don't have to be World War III, just a war or whatever, and you're drafted or you go into the military. At this point, can you say, hey, look, I'm a medical marijuana card holder. I can't hold a firearm, guys. I conscientiously I object. You can't draft me for the war because I smoke marijuana. What happens at that point?
Well, I mean, because of somebody like Muhammad Ali, you may have a chance, but because of what his fight was, as far as conscientious objective goes,
Well, I mean,
even
Disney was. Even Walt Disney was one.
We lost CV.
I think so.
I mean, but see, here's where the hypocrisy comes in. So now everybody's going to conscientiously object to not being able to carry a firearm because they want to smoke, medical marijuana or whatever. It gets hypocritical at some point. Now people get religious, in the name of the spliff. I don't know.
There was a guy in the 90s called Reverend Greenbud, and he used to send a Bible with an actual joint in it to all of his followers.
Spark up one for the Lord. Amen.
There's a different religion for everyone.
Yeah, I bet. There's actually a religion connected to the whole cannabis. I don't know if it's Rastafari or whatever. Don't quote me on this.
Yeah, you're right.
But there's actually a religion.
Yeah.
There's actually a religion where they smoke the cannabis. And it's trippy. It's really trippy. So they could claim that, but at the same time, how do you claim that exception, and then at the same time you try to convince people you're a spiritual being, but then you need to hold a gun, and this is so you can smoke the it gets convoluted real quick, really quick.
Right.
I don't that's a lot of work. I'd rather make a choice.
Let me throw this out there too. I can't see but one of the chats, and I thank everybody for being here in the chat, both of them, since I don't know, somehow I got 2 live streams going at the same time, which is crazy and very cool. But let's throw out this. You know how medical records work?
Yes.
Okay. So medical records are closed due to the HIPAA law. So if anyone is denied the right to buy a firearm because said customer holds an MMJ card, that's a medical marijuana card, then that is against the law and won't hold up in court.
Yeah.
The only way they can deny you is if they have a criminal record. That said, you have to abuse the card, that you've been given legally by the state. I find the privacy and health records also in violation of what they tried to pass. And this, now, if you're new to this conversation, guys, we're talking about 2016. Hello, June Gall, Papa
June
Texas,
Gall is here.
big
Is she
guy,
in?
free to be me, Barbie, dark matter.
That's yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, have a good day, big guys. He's heading out. A couple people are heading out. It's all good. Like I said, don't forget to spark up when you're out there. Yeah, I see two live streams on, but they're the same. They're the
Okay.
same. It's the same one.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
What I spoke of earlier about infringing on the rights to keep and bear arms, that right should not be infringed in any way. And I and I would love to see more transparency in our government when they go to write these laws and pass these laws. I think the simple is you having a camera on you, they should be filming what they're doing. And there should be the White House has a YouTube channel. You know what I mean? When
Yeah.
they go to legislate us, they're supposed to be representing us. I'd like to see more transparency. I don't see a U.S. Congress YouTube page. I don't see a U.S. Senate YouTube channel. I shouldn't say page, but either or. I think there needs to be a point where people can go, wait, whoa, 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 what are you guys trying to pass here? And then because they'll throw it into another law, and next thing you know, there goes some liberties, there goes some securities out the window. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I know what you mean. I know what you mean. Well, I mean, I, there's that, but like I said, ever since the new, I guess, millennium, rights have been taken away. People have been trying to do things. I guess folks are trying to reinvent the wheel. Some people say with the advent of, like 9/11, different laws have changed and
Right.
it's a different world. There's different, I don't know. There's different mindset on what's legal, what's not legal, what should be constitutional, what's unconstitutional. It's depending more on, I guess people's interpretations of the law as far as, like their right wing, politics or left wing politics. It seems like people are basing it upon a lot of emotions and, how they feel at the moment, as opposed to what's right, what's wrong. At least that's what I'm seeing. I could be wrong. And I see where you got the two chats open. One chat is with me, one chat is without me.
Wow. I may have to close one of these. I think I'm going to try to close this one and open the other one, maybe. I'm not sure. I want to see if they can hear you in this one. Minuteman Homestead's here. Stream since you can't hear Mel. Okay.
They can't hear me in one?
I suggest y'all go to the other stream since can't hear Mel and the other guy here. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know which one to end. That is weird. Like I told you earlier, I was like, what is going on with YouTube? Because it opened two. I've never had that happen before. I've never seen anybody ever live stream two live streams at the same time. I mean, heck, I might as well pull my phone up and do a third just to hold a record.
I don't even think I'm in here anymore.
Really? That is.
I don't know. I've been here, but
no.
I'm not seeing myself.
You're still alive. Tell you what, let me go in this other one, and I'm going to come back to this one, guys. Whatever one, I'm going to end this stream because this is I don't know. It's confusing for me. I can't see both chats. I can only see one chat, and I can see myself here. So I'm going to try to get back over here to Mel so you guys can hear both sides of this conversation. Okay, guys, if you'll join me over there, I would appreciate it. Thanks. Mel, you're still here, buddy, right?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay.
I have no idea what's going on.
I don't know. That's confusing for me too, man. I'm not even going to try to. I'm not even going to try to front on that.
I think it's both sides of the argument. It's the medical marijuana people and the medical marijuana people and the firearms people in one chat. I don't know. You pick a side.
Okay, now I've got the one chat up. Hopefully everybody is here. Let's see if I can find the actual chat. Let's see. Is that even showing up? That's group chat, isn't it? That's the wrong one. Wow, that's weird.
Well, it's the glitches, man. That's YouTube. They mess around all the time, you know.
You started talking about medical marijuana and firearms, they're definitely going to glitch out. Or either they really like it and they gave me 2 streams at the same time.
I hear you.
That I find highly likely. Let's see if I can. You know what? I'm going to pull it up on the other laptop. Give me 1 second. Have you ever heard of that happening, Mel? You ever seen that happen on YouTube?
It depends on how you're doing it. I mean, are you signed into multiple computers at one time?
This is one computer, and it did 2 live streams at the same time. Which, whew, like I said, I've never seen that happen before. I never heard of it happening before. Until now.
It's a glitch. It's a glitch in the matrix. I mean, I don't even know if people can hear me. So
I don't think they could hear you on the other stream because they were like, "Who's Rebel talking to?" And I was like, "Wow, hopefully they join us over here." Let's see what happens with the actual stream. I'm going to try to pull it up now so I can watch the chat. It says there's 14 viewers.
I don't see myself in the stream.
That's weird. This is entirely weird.
I don't see me on the stream.
I'm trying to load it up now, but I'm getting 900 notifications from YouTube. That's always fun.
Restart is required.
No, we're good.
Because it's still, I don't see myself.
Yeah, I don't see you there either, though. But I see you in the corner here, so that's.
You want me to go out and come back in?
Oh man, that is weird. I have never seen that before.
Oh, they said they hear me. They said they hear me.
Okay, cool. You can see the chat then, right?
Well, I don't know. Well, one person is saying they can hear me.
It's still saying that I have 2 live, which I don't know. I thought I closed the other one.
No, one is done. It says 47 views.
Technical difficulties, my friends. Technical difficulties.
It said the other one went for 37 minutes. I didn't even know we were talking that long.
Yeah.
And then you have the second one live with is 16 people watching. You know.
It's still showing 2 are live. I don't understand that. Let me try to mute this and see if I can find the chat. Because it's not pulling up on the right over here for me.
Yeah, they can't see me, but they can hear me.
Well, that's good. That's good.
Well, they know I'm here. They know I'm here.
He's here more than in spirit.
There you go. I mean, they might think I'm inside your home or something. I don't know.
Yeah, you're in my pocket hiding.
Yeah, just look over and wave at me a little bit. I don't know.
That's funny. I'm gonna close that down. I'm gonna try to find it on this computer. That is just.
Well, it's all good. As long as you know I'm in here. You know, it's the spirit of Mel. I'm in the corner. I'm in the corner smoking up a joint and sparking up.
Don't say that because people are gonna take you serious.
I'm over here with my firearm and my blunt.
You better not say that in the city of New York, man. Holy crap! You know what?
It's not as bad as people think it is. You might get citations or a ticket or something like that. They try to not crack down on it as much, but if they have to, they'll hit you.
Wow.
You know. But as far as the guns go, even if you're not smoking marijuana, you know, New York gun laws are probably the strictest in the country. You know, so you own a gun here. Listen, let me tell you something. In New York, you'd rather get caught with an illegal marijuana on you than you'd rather get caught with an illegal gun.
Yeah, I read an article where a lady actually called ahead of time, registered. You know, she has a registered firearm. She flew into one of the airports. I don't know if it was LaGuardia or whatever, man. She flew into one of them. They detained her, held her, imprisoned her for having a weapon in New York.
Yeah, because it has to be registered in New York. They don't care.
Yeah, she's on a plane. You know what I mean? Like TSA got her. And she called ahead of time. This was in luggage. This was not like it was on her personal self.
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter.
That is ridiculous.
They're paranoid like that. I mean,
that's ridiculous.
When it comes to guns, because if that gun was to get out of her possession, and a criminal would have gotten it, and then they would have caused the crime with it, then it would be a different situation. So in New York, when it comes to guns here, they'll take you down if you don't have those right credentials. I don't care who you are. You could be a celebrity, you could
Right.
be a politician. You better be the right individual, the right so and so somebody. If
Back
not,
to
they're
that.
coming to get you.
What is the right credentials at that point, though? You know what I mean?
I mean, to have the right proper background check, to be registered with the state, with the feds, so, to make sure that everything is above board as it pertains to New York state law. If
Land
not,
Gaming X, thank you for the dollar super chat. I do appreciate it. I can see the chat now. 420 Blazing's here. Calvin's Corner. Calvin, you actually had an invite. If you can find it's on Hangouts, there's an actual invite there sitting there waiting for you. It's been there since we started both live streams at the same time, which is crazy.
young Calvin, what's up, Calvin? What's going on with you?
Minuteman's here. Groovy Blue 18.
Love some Groovy Blue.
Yeah.
We're trying to get you to choose. You can choose your guns or the marijuana. Which one do you want? If you only had one choice, which one would you choose? Your Second Amendment rights or your right to a joint any time of the day. For the people that don't carry weapons, it means nothing to them. For the people that carry weapons and they need that, that's when it gets dicey. That's the people that really have the problem. So now it becomes a situation where medically you can't have the card, because if you have the card, now they're saying it's a causality. Even though it's for medical reasons, they're saying that you owning a firearm could, equate to, if you had some Xanax or some what do you call it, or would name a drug, any prescription drug, that's when it gets dicey. So now, you're saying it's just this particular drug or this particular substance that will make you erratic and make you a killer, when it's been proven, that if anything is gonna not be as a violent thing, it's the marijuana. I haven't heard of many violent episodes with people with guns when it came to marijuana, but it's about something different.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree.
So you have to make a decision what side you're going to stand on it. Or it's like Big Guys was saying when Big Guys was in here. I don't know if Big Guys is still here. It comes down to the people. The people fighting against this stuff and not just going for, whatever they say. But then that goes into people being involved in their government, and there's a lot of people who may not trust their government, but at the same time they don't want to be involved. So
if you ever hear me say I don't trust my government, it's not because like most crazy typical people, you know what I mean? Like I'm just grouping the far extreme. If I say it's because I'm looking at this law, you know what I mean? Like I don't trust them because of this law. I don't think they put enough time and effort and research into looking at all the things the points that I've kind of brought up. I mean, sure, I know that they have their legalities that they have to jump through, but it's more to supersede federal law, to take away, our rights. They're going to use it more for their advantage. You know what I mean?
But then that goes back all the way to the Civil War and stuff like that, when
Agreed.
states wanted to secede from the Union, and they try to overstep or break away from federal law.
You know what I mean? They did it. It wasn't, they did it, but it's still the state laws actually do supersede federal. You know what I mean? But when people look at it, they think it's the other way around.
Well, there's a connection there. There's something that exists to where they try to keep things unified, and there's constantly states that are trying to do their own different thing. So in one state this may be the case, in another state they'll say, well, you know what? Forget what they're saying as it pertains to that. We're going to do our own thing here.
Right.
So federally it is a struggle, regardless of what the law is. Because there's states that are not, for same-sex marriage, but you have to deal with that. So, that's another issue. But,
exactly.
It comes down to where, there are penalties if you don't go by these laws. Right. So,
well, I mean, the way I look at it is, if you let that slide, then let's say someone who takes a prescription drug or prescription pills, they're both medically approved, right? What's to say that they're not going to take the rights away from someone who has prescription drugs, prescription pills.
Well, it's like what we were talking about with Fireman CV earlier. You know, it goes into the situation where you're not going to stop at one particular way. You know, you're not going to say, okay, it's just Second Amendment rights, and then none of the other amendments, are a problem, because people are forgetting once First Amendment rights go away,
yeah,
it's a different ballgame.
It's
Now,
it's coming to that too.
once that goes away, forget it, man. You might have, FBI, Secret Service, or ATF, whoever the hell, coming to your house 2, 3 a.m. in the morning because of a tweet that you did.
Yeah.
So
420 Blazing said, "Oh, it's not federal." No, it is federal. 420 Blazing. The courts ruled, and this we're talking about 2016 when this went down, and most people didn't hear about it. The courts ruled that medical marijuana card holders can't buy firearms.
Well, it would
Period.
be interesting to hear what 420, Dean 420 Blazing would have to say about
Yeah,
it.
me too. I'd love to hear what he had to say, because some of the things I brought up was, this was under the Ninth U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals, and they rationalized it under irrational and unpredictable behavior from people who smoke.
Causality, and they can, in some instances they can, because of the fact they put certain things in the marijuana now that causes a different effect. But see, they would have to prove, if you had a good lawyer on the other end, that these causalities would actually prove that they would become violent when ingesting marijuana in whatever form.
Yeah, because they grouped it all under as a drug. Like I said, there is a difference between an opioid and something that grows naturally all over the planet, weed. You know what I mean?
But see, here's the problem when you put the what is it? I'm thinking the TCH. I think it's THC or TCH. I forget. Once you put that in it, right?
Yes.
It changes the genetic makeup of it, or not genetic makeup, or the chemical causation of what it does to you. Because if you have the herb itself, marijuana, right, and you ingest it or you smoke it just without any other substances that they put on it, it's a totally different experience.
Right.
And anybody that smokes marijuana, that does dabs, knows that. So the argument that they would have to make is that the herb by itself is not cause for them to take away your rights. But however, how do you make that argument when you're actually altering the substance from its natural state?
Right.
So that's where the issue comes in.
420 Blazing brought up something here. He said he had to prove I didn't have a medical marijuana card in Maine to even apply for public housing.
That's different. I mean, that's different. We're talking about something that's contentious when it comes to those people who are pro-guns versus those people who are anti-guns, because people have to look at the political climate now, which is what's going on right now with all these school shootings now. So this is also a reaction to that as well.
Wait, did you hear what I said though? 420 Dean Blazing said he had to prove I did not have a medical marijuana card in Maine to even apply for public housing. He's discriminated against because of a medical condition.
I understand that. And I'm saying that is related to it as well. But that goes into the stigma that comes into people who smoke marijuana and that. But when it comes to the firearms, I was talking directly to the fact that some of this is because of the fact that you had the school shootings, and a couple of mass shootings around the country. So while what he went through is sad and unfortunate, I don't know if that's either a side piece or if it's a part of the bigger issue. I'd have to see the numbers on that. Is that something that's quite common, or is it just because of the prejudice and stigma that relates to anything? Because I could say the same thing, being a black man in America, that I would have problems getting housing in particular places just because of my race. So is that an isolated incident, or is it part of a bigger problem?
Well, it goes back to the 2014 to 2016, the studies. I mean, you're talking about government federally funded public housing, and if you're breaking the law, they're not gonna allow you to live there because you have a medical marijuana card, which is a medical condition. Now we're discriminating. You know what I
It
mean?
depends. It depends, but it goes back to what I was saying earlier about the whole thing with state laws versus federal laws, because there's some states, I think Colorado was this at one point, and others,
California.
even New Jersey at one point, they were saying how it was legal in the state, and then the federal was saying it was illegal. Then there's back and forth, vice versa. So you had states where they were saying it's legal within the state, but then the federal government was saying it's against, and then it was switching back, and then it's like, okay, the feds are saying it's legal, the state saying it's illegal, then it's the feds saying it's illegal, the state saying it's this, and then it gets confusing, because if they're not in a line, it causes a problem for you,
Hmm.
because at some point somebody may have told him that, you know what, it was legal to have that card in your state, it was legal to do these things,
Right.
and then depending on who's funding the housing, right, the public housing, that determines whether or not you'll be able to get access, because they're saying this is against our set of laws because we fund this. So a lot of it is bureaucracy, it's discrimination, it's archaic laws, and people that don't understand. There's lobbyists, there's special interest groups.
Right.
You know, it's a deep thing. It's a monster. It's a beast.
But
You know, it's Go ahead.
yeah, I agree. I mean, we're looking at, like I said, like I brought up earlier, let's call it a CCW, your concealed weapons permit, or whatever your state calls it, right?
All right, go ahead. It's around there. It's around there.
Yeah, I mean, here's a registration. It shouldn't be used against you, period, right? Or even when you buy a weapon. These registrations are not supposed to be. It was used against the Japanese Americans, in when Pearl Harbor happened. We we imprisoned a lot of Japanese Americans for no reason. It was for the safety of America at the time. That was what the premise was, and they used people's affiliation because of their race. You know what I mean? They were discriminated
Yeah,
against.
yeah, yeah,
Period.
yeah.
No,
Got you.
no.
Their nationality. Yeah,
Right
yeah,
now,
got you.
back to what I was saying about, here's a concealed weapons permit holder. Maybe they're out of, I don't know, Michigan State, Utah, whatever state they're from, and then you have the issue of, since we're just going to do federal. We'll just go federal. Here's a concealed weapons permit person who owns a weapon, and now they're being denied their Second Amendment because of a HEPA law, which is supposed to protect privacy. If it's medical, it's medical, and there's the HEPA law. Now that's contradicting itself. I think there needs to be more common sense in our government, and not crazy influence. You know what I mean?
But
To push
that's
that
the
agenda.
problem though. You have to take the influence of money and certain, voices, out of politics. And unfortunately, you have a lot of corruption, a lot of soft power, the resources that are used to buy politicians and votes and stuff like that,
Right.
that exist and are ever prevalent, because you got to remember, let's look at somebody like the NRA, not to knock them,
Yeah.
but the NRA funds and subsidizes whole campaigns from multiple political candidates. So
True.
you're not going to tell me that somebody else who's funded by the NRA is automatically going to come out and go against the NRA, when the NRA is probably one of the sole, sponsors for them being in the office that they hold. So that holds a certain weight, a certain influence. And then you start looking at different lobbyists all across the board,
Mhm.
and it's the same thing that plays out. So, at what point does the corruption really get addressed?
True.
And the reality is that the situation persists because this is the status quo. This is how business is done. This is what people are willing to die for. There are people that are willing to die for their corruption in politics, in business, in life.
Agreed.
And it comes down to, what are you willing to sacrifice? There's a lot of people that are not willing to die to speak up and do the right thing. I mean, it isn't right that people get their Second Amendment rights taken away, because, they want to, have medical marijuana, which they may need,
Right.
or even for recreational purposes, which if they're responsible, that's on them. But here's what happens. Certain influences, certain people feel some type of way, be it ideologically or
Mhm.
financially, whatever reason, cook it up in their mind. and they decide that they want to exercise their political power. A lot of times it's unfortunate that we exercise dominion over people, you know, through, various means instead of understanding that we can be sensible and reasonable with each other. But we're so busy trying to control each other.
Yeah, it goes. It goes without saying. I think we're on the same page with it, for sure.
I mean,
The NRA. I mean, it lost. I mean, there's several media groups, and we're speaking on one of them now on the social media platforms that are, have dropped sponsorship from those things. It's our outlook for 2060. The year 2060 doesn't look good. You know what I mean? If we continue down the path that we're continuing, there won't be much of rights left in any country, much less this one. The country that represents freedom. We are that country. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Will we be in 2060? That will be said. That will be seen to be. We shall see. I mean, if like we were saying earlier, like I said, if you lose the first, the second, the third, or even the Fourth Amendment, you know what I mean?
Well, I mean, I think the most important, and people may say I'm controversial with the statement I'm about to say. I think the most important amendment for various reasons, or obvious reasons, is the most important amendment for obvious reasons is the Second Amendment. People say, well,
freedom all the rest.
Yeah, because Second Amendment is a direct correlation or a direct response to the oppression or the militias that were formed and you fighting against the government and all that. People think that the Second Amendment just represents the guns. No. It represents protections for citizens against government organizations or other organizations from coming in and just taking away all your rights as a citizen, as a human being. And this is from somebody who doesn't care to get involved in that. But over time, I've realized, because people say, okay, well, the First Amendment is the most, important thing. In theory, in actuality, it's a part of it, because the Second Amendment is probably the easiest to attack. It's the easiest to come after when something happens.
Yeah.
When somebody has free speech, they can say, "Oh, it was a skid," or "I didn't mean it," or "I was in a drunken rage," whatever.
Well, I mean, they've attacked that too. I mean, where does the First Amendment stop, and where does it begin? I mean, people can burn American flags, and it's their freedom of speech. It's no longer a crime.
But it's harder to attack, because it's so vague. Where freedom of speech starts and where it begins. I mean, where it ends. That could get so vague because of satire. You gotta remember. Look at Snoop Dogg in the whole Lavender video where he shot a fake clown president. That he chumped it off as satire, but the realistic part is that if he would have actually shot and killed this fictitious character inside of the video, that can incite people to want to do some harm to their local or federal, politicians or whatever the case.
Yeah.
And where do you draw the line?
I think we ought to be able to make politicians more accountable for the things that if they're going to represent us, they should be more accountable for the things that they do. There should be penalties, there should be problems, there should be issues for when they pass or try to slide it by us, some of the things that are not on the up and up. You know what I mean? There's
ways to hold politicians accountable. That's where the voting comes in. And
yeah, but that's it. When's the last time we actually cleaned house?
But see, here's the problem. That's on the people as well, because let's go to the presidential elections or any election. Most people show up for the general election. A lot of people don't think about the primary, the electoral college, getting involved in, the selection process of who these candidates will or won't be. A lot of people wait until the major decisions have already been decided, and they say, here's, either Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton or whoever it may be. And some people are like, okay, well, let's go with the lesser of two evils. Why do we have to go with the lesser of two evils when if people got more involved and engaged in the politics of what they do, of what's happening in the world or what's
Mhm.
going on in their city, state, or country, it could be more engaging. Because I'll go with Tip O'Neill, old politician from the days of Reagan. I mean, he was a House Speaker, something like that. Tip O'Neill said all politics are local, and it's true. You
Yes.
know, I mean, all politics start on a local level, but here's what happens. We wait until it gets to a national level or international stage, and then we're in the outrage and we're upset, and it's in the media, it's on social media, and then now it's a problem. No, this is something that was supposed to start in your local neighborhoods, at your community board meetings, at rallies, at your community centers. But what happens is people get so disengaged and disinterested and disenfranchised that they forget that their voice means something. And the last point before I let you speak
Go
is
ahead, keep
I think
going.
it's George Lucas that said, and there's a couple other people that said, it says usually the people that don't think they have any power are the ones who often don't, because they give it away. And I'm paraphrasing. A
You're
lot of
right,
people think
absolutely right.
a lot of people don't think that they can change and make a difference is because, they give up that power. And once you give up that power and you leave it up to other people to decide, sooner or later, you find yourself in a series of decisions where you're not a voice because you chose not to be. And then when you
Mhm.
try to interject yourself, there's no place for you.
Yes.
Not trying to get too deep on anybody because I know when I start getting too deep, they like,
Right.
yo, Mel, chill, tell a joke or something.
No, no. You know what? I like the deepness here. Like I said, this is something that happened in 2016, and it's current today. And some people are not aware of it. I thought because I was discussing the issue with some other people earlier today, and they're like, "Wait, what?" I was like, "You're not aware of that?" And they're like, "No." I was like, "Okay." And then I went into what happened with the appeals courts with the federal law prohibiting medical marijuana card holders from purchasing guns, and how I thought it violated the Second Amendment, even though they ruled it does not violate the Second Amendment rights because marijuana has been linked to irrational or unpredictable behavior,
Hmm.
which I find just ludicrous. I mean, if you want to find facts to back up anything, I think in that position you can, whatever position you want to uptake. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? You can
Yeah.
find the facts to back it. I mean, even if you go back to like 2011 with the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, where they clarified in a letter that the law applies to marijuana users regardless of whether their state has passed legislation authorizing marijuana use for medical purposes. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And since 2011, there's a growing number of states that have legalized medical marijuana or recreational use. But
Yeah.
marijuana still remains illegal under federal law. I think the correlation between the individual, if you're just going to blanket people, that's where they mess up. Maybe if you see somebody who's had a repeated history, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
Then, if they're violent, if they're, they want to call it irrational and unpredictable behaviors with, under the circuit court of appeals, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals to be exact, how they ruled, it was, they're going to be more likely to be irrational or unpredictable behavior.
Well, I
Prove
mean,
it. Prove
the
that fact beyond a
you,
shadow of a doubt.
but if people are not reality testing it and actually, holding them to the fire, and
Right.
actually making sure there's independent
Mhm.
studies where this being done, then that won't happen. I mean, right now, what I've seen from what you're saying, they were smart. Whoever put this into play 2016 was smart. All they were doing when it comes to, especially when it comes to law and these court systems, all they were trying to do in 2016 was to create a legal precedent for
Mhm.
this moment,
Right.
this very moment that we have here. They did that on purpose. Like,
Mhm.
let's say I wanted something to stick in 2020. Right now it's 2018. I pass a law or bill or whatever the case may be, the most
Mhm.
minuscule thing that has nothing to do with anything. And now in 2020 or 2021, it's a major issue because I've already set legal precedent.
Well,
I, Go ahead.
yeah, yeah. This was prior. I know this passed in 2016. This was before, because I know some people were probably going to be like, "Oh, it's because we have Donald Trump as president." Well, no, Donald Trump didn't become president until January 20th. his first day in office. This happened before then, and most people aren't aware of it. That's why I wanted to bring that up. But you're
But
absolutely right as far as making a legal precedent.
but that's what happens. The people
Yes.
that were setting this in motion know that you can't. Well, not that you can't. It's easier if you could say, just like you said, you're selling it for them by saying, hey, this was in 2016. This was in 2016. So people start saying, oh, this was already on the books. This
Yeah.
is already on the books. And anybody that knows anything about law, about politics, knows that if anything is to be respected, it's legal precedent.
Yeah.
Legal precedent shows that there's a track record, there's a history of it, there's a justification for this legally, which justifies other things legally, whether they be constitutional or not. Now it comes in. There's a lot of laws on the books that weren't constitutional that had to come back and be overturned later and go up to the Supreme Court. That's why we have a Supreme Court system. People don't
Right.
realize that the
Right.
Supreme Court is there to figure out whether or not these things are constitutional based
True.
on the Supreme Court justices that sit there, in those chairs.
Yeah.
And all this is a big system, a big legal system that people may or may not understand.
Yeah. When I titled this live stream, I said court rules that medical marijuana card holders can't buy firearms. The court I was speaking of is the highest court in the land, Supreme Court.
But that's
That,
important
right.
for people to know that, because people, won't understand that this is how stuff like this happens. And then there was an appeal, because you talked about appeal.
Two. Yeah, there was two U.S. Court of Appeals. We're talking about the Fourth Circuit in Virginia and the Ninth Circuit. This is the summary of this conversation here we have in the live stream.
And the reason it's important to talk about the appeal part is I think the appeal is more relevant to the conversation than anything, because people have to understand that when you have an appeal, and when you have an appeal twice, that means that in some instances, somewhere, these decisions were overturned. That means that somebody was for this and they made the argument that went against, and then somebody was for it again and won a case. There were cases that were won in favor of people having medical marijuana cards and all that,
Yeah.
and somebody appealed that. So when that happened again, somebody else came again and influenced an appeal over the decision. So what do?
I'm glad you brought that up. I'm actually glad you brought that up. I'm going to touch on that for a second. From
Go
a
ahead,
legal
go ahead.
standpoint, the nexus between marijuana use and the violence was established by the U.S. Supreme Court of Appeals for the Fourth Circuit. That's the one in Virginia I was speaking of earlier. In the 2014 case, the United States versus Carter, the case cited a number of studies suggesting a significant link between drug use, including marijuana use, and violence. And I said included because they grouped all that together. So I won't get into that. But according to the Ninth Circuit summary, in the words of the Fourth Circuit, those studies found that, one, probationers who had perpetrated violence against, in the past were significantly more likely to have used a host of drugs. And then they preferenced that, they added the word marijuana also, you know what I mean? Because there's a host of drugs that were listed, but they specifically chose to make sure that marijuana was in there. We're talking about hallucinogens. We're talking about sedatives. We're talking about heroin. We're talking about, just a whole host of drugs. Like I said, those probationary people who had never involved, and some of these had never been involved in a violent episode. You know what I mean? That was also in there. And second, almost 50% of all the states and federal prisoners who had committed violent crime felonies were drug users or addicts in the year before their arrest, as compared to 2% of the general population. That was some of the preferences they used to pass this law way back in 2016. And third, the individuals who used marijuana and cocaine, in addition to alcohol, were significantly more likely to engage in violent crimes than individuals who used alcohol, which I find funny. You know what I mean? Like, these studies, who's doing these studies? I'd like to know who did these studies.
That's interesting. There was a documentary on Netflix, a great documentary. They were talking about sugar, and it was sugar and food, and how they
Deadly.
manipulate the food supply. And they went back to a study to years ago when they said in the sugar industry they had lobbyists and professors who actually wrote studies and stuff that who are on the payroll for the sugar industry. So
Mhm.
look at who's behind this. Whatever lobbyist, whatever group, they usually have their fake, so quote unquote, independent
Right.
people who are on the payroll for them at universities, and they come and they make these independent studies. Like you said, anything can be, if you look
Chocolate.
hard enough, you can find the evidence for whatever you want.
They
And if you
pay
can't
for it.
find the evidence, you can create it.
Yeah,
You
that
know,
cigarette companies did it back in Big Tobacco did it back in the day. Chocolate still does it today. You
but
know what I mean?
But here's the kicker. The guy that was doing it for the sugar industry,
Hmm.
they came to find out that he had connection to the tobacco industry as well.
Oh yeah, no doubt.
So, so if I find the name of the documentary, I'll definitely tell you. But the point I'm trying to make is that they can find people who work at universities who have degrees and stuff like that. Think about
Yeah,
this. You're a doctor, you have a doctorate. You're only making maybe 50, 60,000, maybe 90,000 a year, right? Big tobacco company comes to you and says, "You know what? We're going to pay you about 6 or 7 million, you and your colleagues, to come together with a survey or independent study. You know that you could probably get that done on for pennies on the dime. So they're
yeah,
paying you $4 or $5 million to do this study. That's only going to cost you about 50 to $60,000 to do. And then you got resources and access to the stuff at the university, so it's not going to cost you much,
right.
right?
Exactly.
Why wouldn't you take it?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I mean, if you in those type of, situations, why
Mm.
wouldn't you be at least enticed with that? I'm not saying it's right,
Oh,
but
I
they they,
agree.
they find ways. Y-
Yeah, I was going to say,
Go ahead.
the Fourth Circuit argued that one of the link, or excuse me, the Fourth Circuit argued on the link between drug use and violence. The question of correlation and causation doesn't matter. That was something I stressed earlier, that the government need not prove a causal link between drug use and the violence to block firearm purchases by drug users. Right? We're calling marijuana a drug. A simple link between drug use and violence, regardless of which way the causation or casualization runs, is grounds enough. That's how they were able to circumvent, our Second Amendment laws. I mean, I'm not saying I use marijuana. I'm just saying that's how they were able to get around it.
I
Still,
always knew
the
rebel
Ninth
rebel
Circuit.
state sovereign is a split head.
If I did, I would be honest. I'd say, hey, listen, I do, but I don't. I'm willing to take a drug test any day,
What's that smoke I see in the background? Let's not, let's
my
not,
house
let's
better
not.
not be on fire. But if it was, hey, I'm all for it. I am pro marijuana, medical use and even recreational use if it may help somebody. You know what I mean?
Oh man, I was
Definitely
I
pro.
was
I'm definitely pro medical.
I'm breathing a sigh of relief, man. Now I don't have to put out my joints on your live streams.
That's good.
No, 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 let me stop. Let me stop.
But back to what I was saying. Still, the Ninth Circuit did suggest causation was part of the decision, saying that irrational behavior can be a consequence of marijuana use. That is
It
the most
can be, but
general
see,
term that they could actually possibly drum up.
but look, let's go back to legal terminology. Whoever did this was very slick,
Oh,
very
I
slick.
agree.
It can cause, and they're not lying. They're not
Hmm.
lying. It can cause irrational behavior. Because just think about this:
Hmm.
a sane person who's holding a firearm is obviously gonna hold the firearm and deal with it the way that they're supposed to. Don't tell me that somebody who's under the influence of marijuana, who's smoking a joint, is going to be as proficient or as responsible as somebody who's not. So all he had to do is see the thing that people fail to realize. All a savvy lawyer, a smart lawyer, had to do is argue reasonable doubt. That's it.
Hmm.
That's why they say beyond the reasonable doubt. They
Hmm.
created a reasonable doubt to plant in the minds of those deciding. And they didn't have to prove that this is something that will happen and somebody will get shot, smoking a joint or something like that. All they had to prove is that erratic behavior, irrational behavior can occur while smoking marijuana, and it's not good for somebody to own firearms while smoking marijuana.
Agreed.
All they had to do was plant that seed, which is what they did. No pun intended for the 420 people. You know,
Right. Right.
all they had to do is plant the seed and let it grow. And it
Mhm.
grew into a marijuana plant, that will cause problems for people that have firearms. And now you can't, because it's like what you do is you equate that to somebody saying, okay, I'm gonna smoke up a joint, I'm gonna drink some drugs, and I'm gonna sit here and clean my guns. Chances are somebody could get shot because you know maybe you let something fire off. There was a kid in the house, or somebody shook you, or you got a phone call, gun dropped, gun went off, but you were under the influence, so you don't know. You mess around, shot yourself. So it gets dicey because on one end they're overreaching, but they're using that little bit of suspicion to say, hey, you know what? They shouldn't have it at all.
Yeah. Well, I mean, let's go back to this argument on the opposite side that I brought up earlier. The the substance use increases risky behavior, right? So we're gonna say that they said, which is basically what they did say. You know what I mean? And this
Mhm.
applies to plenty of other drugs too. I mean, not just illegal ones. For instance, drug policy researchers like what was his name, Mark Kleiman, I believe. That's the one that did the study on tobacco users were more likely to engage in crime relative to general population. Remember the 2% that I brought up earlier.
Yeah, yeah.
These authors, like you said, are they're going to find those stronger links between violent behavior and whether it's alcohol, or any other legal drug or et cetera, to make their causes, whether it's I don't care if it's these associations are usually bought and paid for, whether it's alcohol intoxication
Well, no, it
or
is, it is, it
some
is.
pharmacology induced violent crime. You know what I mean?
But pay attention to this part, and not to cut you off. This is the piece that's important, whether it's bought and paid for. You need to have it be bought and paid for by a credible, right, accredited
Third
professor or
party.
scholar, third party, somebody who appears independent but really is not. And somebody, think about this. Me and you were having this same conversation, right? And the reality is, we're two live streamers, two regular guys that do our things prospectively. We have, things we do professionally, right? But we're not two PhDs. Not that I know of. You don't have a PhD. I don't have a PhD, right? So our opinions may not be as credible, to the greater audience. But just imagine, right? If the both of us had PhDs and you came from Princeton and I came from Yale, or somebody else in the chat who came up on the panel was from Harvard, now we hold more weight. Now we hold more validity. Now all of a sudden my opinion can be taken for fact, you know, because I hold this prestigious degree and I work at this law firm, or you have these connections to these politicians. So guess what? That holds more weight if I get that person to be on the payroll.
Mhm.
And that's what they do.
Yeah, I think they seek them out. You know what I mean? Like if you're
They stalk
looking,
them.
yeah, yeah. Especially your lobbyists, your big lobbyists, they seek these people out, and then they're bought and paid for. I mean, let's just be honest.
But see, but they're bought and paid for handsomely. I mean, think
Oh
about it.
yeah, yeah.
If you're somebody with tenure, even if you have your tenure is, you're lucky if that tenure is gonna net you 100,000, a couple of 100,000. You're lucky if you get that, and
Hmm.
that's just really good professors, But if somebody comes to you and says, you know what, hey, I just need you to do an independent study or publish a book, or be a surrogate for me as part of my organization, still keep your job, and they get a nice package, a nice benefit package from this, or whatever the case. The temptation is on, especially if they feel like they're not being appreciated.
Hmm.
That's when they get real serious.
Now,
So,
now that we have 19 people watching, and this is something I wanted to wait till now to bring up because
mhm.
I thought that it may even shock some people. You know what I mean? Like it's when you go back and you,
The
and you
shock of the smoke.
no, no, no. I mean, you got to think of the time and the area and the period. This is what I'm going to say.
Speaking,
The
man.
the Gun Control Act of 1968. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it. That's basically where we did away with automatic weapons. We're talking the Vietnam era.
Before
Those
my time, but I got
right,
you.
right before your time. If you go back and because I've read a bunch of different gun laws and everything, but the actual Gun Control Act of 1968 prohibits anyone from possessing guns if they use or are addicted to cannabis.
That makes sense. No, that makes sense. That's probably what they used.
It was part of it. Yeah. I waited to bring that up. I just wanted to see if anybody in the chat would actually bring it up, if anybody even knew that part of it. Because we did have somebody here from the 420 community for sure. we have some other people who have opinions, and I would definitely want to reach out to everybody here in the chat, and I want to see. I'm watching and reading the chat.
You know who I think would know something like that. You'd have to go over to like somebody like Ben Inya. I'm still subscribed to him. Ben Inya would know, and he knows some people that are really deep, heavy into this stuff. That's why you got to be careful, because this conversation can get really big. If you really want to have this conversation, I know some people that could really have this, like, like, I might have to reshare this chat right now. Like I said, I know some people that really would get into this whole thing, because they're like, yo, dude, you have no idea. If you want to ever speak to somebody about this, you speak to Ben Inya about the criminalization of marijuana. And
I think the criminalization of it is,
but that's a part of it. That's a part of it. And the reason I say that is because what you took the time to brought up, I didn't know about per se, but I understand legal precedent. So now everything that you said makes sense to me. You use the 1968 law to connect to 2016. 2016 connects to 2018, and then there's a lineage to it, And then I imagine if you go back further, because I know some historians, if you go back further, I imagine that there's something even before 1968 that did that. Because what they try to do is create legal precedent, even if it's the most minuscule of things. Because what happens is when you create legal precedent, you can go into the files and say, well, this circuit court judge believed this, and this court said this, and this higher level said that. I would like to see what the Supreme Court decision was on that case. Like I said, it would be interesting.
Yeah, that ninth U.S. Supreme Court of Appeals. That happened August 31st of 2016. That was under Chief.
Oh, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about if there was a Supreme Court decision, 1968.
Okay. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. No. I mean, when you go back through the archives and you start going into legal history of the United States, you want to see how far back it goes and what it ultimately boils down to. I want to read some of the decisions, some of the court documents from actually some of these Supreme Court judges or people that appealed or, put out these decisions. You want to hear if there were any dissenting decisions. I think the most important thing would be, as it pertains to 2016, I would like to hear what some of the Supreme Court judges had to say about this thing, because they write briefs, legal briefs and stuff like that for people to read later. Those would tell you, some of the decision making and the thought process as to why and who's probably influencing their decisions. Those are things that I would definitely want to know. But see, this may sound boring to some people, but the reason all this is relevant is because this is how you fight. You fight by being informed.
Yeah, if you go back to, I'm gonna give you your tip here. The August 31st of 2016, that was under Chief District Judge Gloria Navarro. That happened during that time. If you want to reference somebody, because you're talking about people who actually make their middle notes, off to the side that can be read in all the abbreviations, of why
these are not just middle notes at the judges, as far as there's actual like physical documents, there's actual legal documents that they have for public consumption or for people that they're going to the archives.
Yes,
anybody that wants to know.
Yeah, that's why I said that you have to go to the Chief District Judge Gloria Navarro from August 31st of 2016, so that you can reference that. That's where that ninth U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals happened, and this is where and when, so that you can look it up.
Was the Chief Judge who?
It was Chief District Judge Gloria Navarro. That's Navarro.
Hold on. Sorry about that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think she was actually appointed under Obama, if I'm not mistaken. Don't quote me on that. A lot of people, they get these, especially in that part of the judicial government, they can get lifetime.
Appointments. What's her name then?
Her name is Gloria, Gloria Navarro, Navarro. And this happened August 31st of 2016. And her decision basically was that a federal government ban on gun sales to abiding state legal medical marijuana patients does not violate the Second Amendment.
You
So
know
it
what's
came
you know
down
what's
to her
sneaky? What's
decision.
you know what's even sneakier about that timing? I'm looking at August 31st.
Yes.
Usually a lot of folks are on vacation at that time.
They pass a lot of laws during holidays and stuff like that. When there's
That's
barely
what I'm
any.
saying. That's sneaky. That's sneaky.
Yeah, there only has to be, there only has to be so many votes. We'll call it 2/3, you know what I mean? In some certain cases and stuff. I mean, look at the way our money became what it is today, and during the holidays when that happened. I won't get into that whole conspiracy that happened. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Uh, I just had it.
Yeah,
Well, I mean, that's interesting. That's interesting the way that was done.
yeah.
I just had it too. I just
Uh,
not speak your piece.
now, we talked about licensed firearm dealers, and people who have medical marijuana cards purchasing, right? Let's say somebody's at a gun show, depending on the state, wherever it may be. They're not required to perform background checks sometimes in those. Apparently, about 22% of all firearm sales take place at these unlicensed sellers. Supposedly, I don't know. This is from facts from way back when. You know what I mean? And those who do not perform background checks, here lies the conundrum. Is this often referred to as the gun show loophole, right?
Yeah.
What happens in these, I don't know, let's call it 11 states in one district to be general, because that's usually what it is. It's 11 states in one district that have these closed loopholes by requiring background checks at the point of sale or firearms. This is California, Colorado, Connecticut, Delaware, District of Columbia, Maryland, Nevada, New York, Oregon, Pennsylvania, Rhode Island, and Washington, as far as I
Hmm.
know. I don't know if it's changed since then. What happens, right? The 8 states that what happens in the 8 states that require not only a background check but also a permit for private purchase, right? We're talking Hawaii, Illinois, Iowa, Massachusetts, Michigan, Nebraska. Nebraska and Michigan are only handguns only, as far
So
as I
wait up.
know.
Was the case? What was the name of the case? Wilson versus Lynch.
Oh, no, it would be shoot, um, get me.
No, it is Wilson versus Lynch.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I was trying to think.
Yeah, yeah. Now the cases that
Yeah,
I'm looking at is it is filed August 31st, 2016
right.
before Susan P. Grabber and Richard C. Talman, Circuit Court judges,
Yeah,
Jed
C.
S.
Thomas has been there forever.
Yeah, yeah. United States Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit opinion. I'm just taking the time. All this.
But back to what I was saying about Iowa, Michigan, Nebraska, North Carolina. All those are just handguns only. New Jersey falls under the same laws as Hawaii and Illinois and Mass, right? It's worth noting that none of these states specifically ban gun ownership by medical marijuana patients or adult cannabis consumers. I did say adult. However, if a gun owner ends up facing a large scale cannabis cultivation charge or a possession with intent to sell charge, they can face additional aggravating factors for the connection of a firearm in the addition to a perjury charge. You know what I mean? And how many years is that going to face? I mean, how long are they going to be away from their family for doing these things? 20 years in a federal prison for legally growing
Yeah.
marijuana, medical marijuana. You know what I mean? And they have a weapon. I'm talking about somebody legally growing, maybe in
Well, there was
California
another
or whatever.
case.
You know what I mean?
There was another case. It says in the notes, it says the plaintiff that held Second Amendment rights claims do not fall within the direct scope of United States versus Dugan 675 F 3D 99 Ninth Circuit 2011, which held that the Second Amendment does not protect the rights of unlawful drug users to bear arms, taking plaintiff's allegations in her First Amendment complaint as true that she chose not to use medical marijuana. The panel concluded that the plaintiff was not actually an unlawful drug user.
Right.
Interesting.
Yeah, she got the actual. She did it in support. She got the card, the medical marijuana card, just in support. She actually as far as I know, she tested negative for marijuana. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So she would, and they still stripped her of her Second Amendment rights. You know what I mean? And in that full disclosure, whether it's the United States government or this catch-22 thing between the Fourth and the Ninth Circuit Court, with the ruling that once this ruling happens, that the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives can add these warnings, you know what I mean, to firearm transaction records, that form, which is, I think it's 4473, amending the question regarding whether or not to prospective firearm owners uses is the addition to marijuana. There should be, hey, listen, because I mean, what if let's call marijuana a depression or, let's group it in that category, whether it's a depressant, a stimulant, or a narcotic drug, or any other controlled substance. Should there be an amendment to that? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think the magic word for anybody who I can't imagine going to try to buy a weapon, right? In any state in the union, the United States. You know what I mean? And have to say those four magic words. I want my attorney, or I want my lawyer. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
To buy a weapon. I find that crazy. You know what I mean? Because I mean, to stay law abiding, as that medical marijuana patient, because the consequences that come with that. I mean, the perjury part of it. You know what I mean? That's both sides are overstepping so much. Technically beats. Hey, buddy.
Yeah, no, it talks about it was an original open letter that was put out
Right.
there, and it was talking about how in the original open letter, that was by the original claimant that, the person wasn't in violation of having firearms or whatnot, that any, like I guess causality that they were talking about was purely incidental, and who knows if they use that incident to say, that this causality is the norm,
Well,
but
you're probably familiar with probable cause and traffic stops and things like that, right?
yes, I am. Yes, I am.
Okay. Well, let's throw the hypothetical out there also. Let's say there's someone who's legally registered medical purpose cannabis participant. You know what I mean? Or whatever title we want to give them. They're legally in their state able to do that. Now, when you have a drug in connection in the same vicinity as a weapon, let's say you have a firearm in your car, in the glove box or somewhere locked away. Now you get pulled over, right? You get pulled over, and the person you're giving a ride is someone who has legal cannabis on them. What's going to happen at that point? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm talking,
I'm
even driving, because I mean, you got to think someone could argue the case that someone's driving under the influence of cannabis. You know what I mean?
Well, this is the opinion of one of the senior district judges, Rakoff. Plaintiff appellant S. Rowan Wilson acquired a Nevada medical marijuana registry card. She then sought to purchase a firearm, but the firearm dealer knew that Wilson held a registry card consistent with a letter issued by the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives (ATF). The dealer refused to sell Wilson a firearm because of her registry card. Wilson sued, challenging the federal statutes, regulations, and guidance that prevented her from buying a gun. The district court dismissed Wilson's complaint, and Wilson appealed. We affirm. Okay. There was legal grounds to stand on here. That's where the appeal came in. But okay, so what it's saying is the appeal was coming from the actual plaintiff. I didn't know that. That's interesting.
Yeah, she brought up that she only had the card
in support
of the protest, to legalize, basically she only received the card in support. She didn't actually partake. Like I said, there was no proof that she actually smoked marijuana. It was just legally assumed. And we know what happens when we're talking about that part of government assumes they make an ass of you and me. You know what I mean? And they assumed that she partook
Well,
in marijuana.
This part is important in background.
Right.
Marijuana is classified as a Schedule 1 controlled substance under
Right.
the Controlled Substance Act 21 USC 812. As Schedule 1 controlled substance, marijuana under federal law is deemed to have no accepted medical use in treatment, and there is lack of accepted safety for use of the substance under medical supervision. ID 812B 1B and C. Woo!
Right.
That part right there.
Yeah.
That's probably where they got them in that background. As far as the classification, they use marijuana as the classification. It has no accepted medical use in treatment. So I see what they did. I see what
Yes.
they did, at least in part. They're saying that the causality of it, okay, fine. In some cases where it's made legal, that's still by the states, but federally and widely, it hasn't been accepted for the medical benefits that it may have. Not to say that it doesn't have medical benefits. It's just that those medical benefits haven't been widely accepted. So that alone would cause them to argue causality of this substance that could be used for recreational use and abused. Am I making sense?
Yeah, I'm following you 100%.
You know, so I mean, the reason that's important, what I just read, is how it's classified, is what determines what they would argue and what they would stand on. They were saying, okay, fine. You're saying that there's medically accepted practices, medically accepted, benefits from, this type of marijuana or medical marijuana. But we, the federal government, or we, the state, whatever state that is, are saying, no, it's not. And it's important. That's important because they could use that to overturn any decision that is made, as it pertains to that.
Let me throw this at you, and you know probably where I'm going to go with it later, but I'm going to throw the first one at you since we have a lot of women here in the chat. I saw Molly Dolly.
Hold on. Let me read the second part of this though, because this is interesting as far as background. It says this, however, is not the view of the state of Nevada. Although Nevada law criminalizes the possession of marijuana, see Nevada State versus Nevada's Constitution was amended in 2000 to provide for medical marijuana use. Sees the Nevada State Constitution under a statutory scheme enacted pursuant to constitutional amendment. A holder of a valid marijuana registration ID card exempt from state persecution for marijuana related crimes. To acquire a registry card, an applicant must provide documentation for an attending physician affirming that the applicant has a chronic or debilitating medical condition, that the medical use of marijuana may mitigate the symptoms of the condition that the physician has explained.
State versus federal again.
Exactly. There you go. That's the point of that.
Right.
So
now, let's go even further, right?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of laws have been overturned because a lot of laws were not correct. Would you not agree? I mean, I'm talking about from the past. Let's go to the.
That's what I said. I'm laughing. That's an understatement. You're talking to a black man in America.
Right. Exactly. That's where I was going to go with it. But I was going to use. You knew where I was going to go with it. But I'm going to use the 19th Amendment. Right.
Okay.
The 19th Amendment was proposed by the U.S. Constitution. It's the women's right to vote.
Mm-hmm. There you go.
This was passed back in June 4th of 1919, and it was ratified I think August 18th of 1920. Okay. That 19th Amendment guarantees all American women the right to vote. What if they're a medical card carrying, should they lose their right to vote?
That's interesting.
If they're going to lose if they can't buy a firearm, should they lose their right to vote? Because here's the thing. When you commit a crime, right, which when you're buying a firearm, it's that 4473 form that you're filling out. At that point, they're convicting you of committing a crime without having a trial, right?
Yeah.
If you're committing the crime of smoking marijuana and it's against federal law, it doesn't matter if it's legal in your state or not. You're still committing it. You're still possessing it. You're still using it, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
We won't get into all the specifics of it. Should a woman and I'm just starting with there. Should a woman lose her 19th Amendment, the right to vote, if she
No,
has medical marijuana?
no, you're right. But also too, it goes into to what I was reading on the background. It says turn into federal firearms provision under 18 USC
Mm.
922 G3. No person who is an unlawful user or addict to a controlled substance may possess or receive any firearms or ammunition. In addition, it is unlawful for a person to sell or otherwise dispose of any firearms or ammunition to any person known to have a reasonable belief to cause that such person is an unlawful user of addict to any controlled substance. So now
Mm.
they're saying as long as you're unlawful. So if you're lawfully, according to the different laws that are out there, if you're lawfully a user, there should be
Mhm.
no reason for you not to possess a firearm if you're lawfully saying that you know, possess, whatever registration that you need. And this is according to their law. But the problem is that there had to be amendments made within state laws, even in Nevada, to say that okay, it's criminalized, but it's legalized at the same time. But at the same time, you can't own a weapon because it's a reasonable doubt that you could possibly be abusing the medical marijuana. So now it's ticky tack and it's overreach and oversight on both ends. Because it's
Technic,
like, go ahead.
I was gonna say, Technetic Beats brought up a point, but I think he missed the thing, the whole encompass part there. He said, but the law prohibits card holders, not medicine users. Doesn't matter if she used the recommendation. She has a card.
No,
And Technetic says it's not legal to use marijuana in the U.S. Yeah, under federal law, it's not legal.
but on the state law, it is.
Right.
And that's what
Yeah.
goes into the bigger fight.
Yeah.
The bigger fight goes into the problem that people are having with this whole thing is that there's not continuity or just clarity on behalf of the federal and state governments.
Right. Right. Exactly. Yeah,
And
that's why I
that's the
brought up
problem.
the 19th Amendment. I'd have probably went all the way back to 1863 through 1865. You know what I
Yes.
mean?
Yeah, no, definitely.
You
But
know, I was going there. Definitely with with the 13th Amendment. You know
oh
what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah. I was thinking
Yeah.
about that the whole time, but you
Yeah.
know how that goes.
Yeah. Exactly.
What are people saying in the chat?
What if I thought what I thought is legalized now? Harvey J Gaming TV. What I thought is legalized now. I don't understand that one. It's legalized in some states, not all. But the issue we're speaking on is people who use medical marijuana, and I use medical because I didn't want to just go into marijuana.
But there's so many
Can't buy
loopholes in this because
firearms. Yes.
there's so many loops. Sorry about that. So many loopholes because on this too, in the background, they were saying the ATF has programmated regulations impending 922 and defending person who is unlawful user or addicted to any controlled substance. So they're saying that yeah, you can be a holder of this card, or they're suggesting, but if there's a reason or a possibility that you could be addicted to the substance, that may cause a problem as well.
Which
And the problem
which
with that is this is once they put out the point of addiction, right?
hmm,
It's hard to prove that you're not addicted to it, even if it's from a medical standpoint. When
right.
normally, people, they use it, under medical guise or the guys under the medical, marijuana or whatever, but people were sparking up a fat one.
Yeah. Yeah, you took the words out of my mouth without, because that's exactly where I was going to go with it. You definitely hit the nail on the head there, buddy, for sure. With that, you still there?
Yeah, I'm still there.
Okay.
No,
Yeah.
I'm reading through these decisions, these opinions.
Mhm.
Um, it says on September 21st, 2011, the ATF issued an open letter to all federal firearms licensees
Mhm.
The open letter that stated the following: any person who uses or is addicted to marijuana, regardless of whether his or her state has passed legislation or the rise in marijuana use for medical purpose is an unlawful user of an addicted or controlled substance and is prohibited by federal law from possessing firearms or ammunition. Such person should answer yes to question 11E on ATF form 4473, and you may not transfer firearms and ammunition to them. Further, if you are aware that a potential transferee is in possession of a card authorizing the possession and or use of marijuana under state law, then you have reasonable cause to believe that that person is an unlawful user of a controlled substance. As such, you may not transfer firearms or ammunition to the person, even if the person answered no to question 11E on ATF form 4473. Woo! And anybody that wants to see that open letter or federal firearms license date, you can go to www.atf.gov files /press/release 2011 /09 /092.
Yeah, I read
Uh,
that. I read that. I was gonna say that for a while, but you got me on it. You pulled it out of the bag before I had a chance. Yeah,
Sorry about that. Dan, I
no,
was
that's good, man. I'm glad you brought it up because that's why I was kind of going into the 19th Amendment for women's rights. You know what I mean? Like the
mhm,
correlation between whether if you're committing a felony, you're committing a felony, right? And they're saying medical marijuana or marijuana, period, is a felony. Even possession of it or use of it is a felony. Should you
yeah,
lose your right to vote? Well, if you commit a felony in most states or in this country, you lose your right to vote. You
yeah,
absolutely lose it. Should they lose their 19th Amendment right if they're doing it legally in their state? Should they lose their right? Should any person lose any right if they're doing something that's state approved, but not federally? Because I believe the federal government hasn't caught up yet to that. I think
mhm,
I mean, there's a lot of old laws on the books, whether, whether certain states, and there's a lot of funny ones. Like the state I live in, you're not allowed to keep a horse in a bathtub. No kidding. They had to make this law because people were doing it or someone did it. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah,
The
yeah,
same
yeah.
warning labels that are on like pillows I have behind me here. You know what I mean? Like on the couch and stuff. There's these warning labels, and like don't put bags over babies' heads and stuff. They have to make these warning labels because somebody wasn't smart enough not to do it. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? I mean, it's a lot of crazy laws on the books. Like there was a law in New York State many years ago, probably over a century ago. I don't know if it's still on the books, archaic law, where I think it's like every third Sunday or every
Yes.
so and so Sunday it was okay to beat your wife. You know,
It's
they
called
had a law
the rule
books.
of thumb.
You know, not rule of thumb. I don't know if it's the rule of thumb. It was a
Yeah, it
law.
was the rule of thumb.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what it was called, but it was a law in New York State where you had legal cause to go and beat your wife in New York
Yeah,
State.
the reason it's called rule of thumb is the stick couldn't be any bigger than your thumb,
Hmm.
and they had to do it on the courthouse steps. Now, do I agree with it? No, but there's a lot, like you said, archaic laws that were out there. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Even if it was the Confiscation Acts and which became the Emancipation Proclamation of 1863. You know what I mean? There's those archaic laws that some of them have been changed, some of them haven't. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, definitely, I agree with
Yeah,
you.
yeah. And that's why we have amendments to certain things, like the 13th Amendment. That's probably, that's one of the greatest things that happened in this country. Because I mean, there's slavery still happening in the world right now in countries. You know what I mean?
Well, actually, people don't realize that now slavery is going on more across the globe more now than it has
Yeah,
back then because we forget about child labor.
that's
You
true.
know, you
Yeah,
forget about
that
legal
too.
immigrants. You know, you forget
Yeah.
about indigenous peoples. You know, people who are mail order brides. You know, people who are in arranged marriages. You know,
Hmm.
people don't realize that, there's a lot of folks out there who are, bought and sold into slavery in ways that you're not thinking about.
Right.
So
Yeah.
it's crazy.
Yeah, just because it was ratified at the end of the Civil War doesn't mean it totally abolished slavery. It started abolishing it in this country. You know what I mean? And
Well, it was
slavery
something
and
that
involuntary servitude. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
no, it was something that was going on as well, because remember the federal government, or at least the union or whatever else had to enforce it at the time, because there were people who were free that were going into territories where they were still kind of like fighting this politically,
Yeah,
that had
exactly.
papers ripped up,
Yep.
and they were like taken back into slavery, and this is going on after the Civil War.
Right.
A lot of people don't think about that stuff.
Right. And like I said, it's still going on in countries not far from here.
I mean,
Actual
it happens.
slavery. You know what I mean?
It happens in many ways. It happens in America, just not in the way that it did.
Right.
I mean, I don't think they're gonna take any black people into slavery, but
And take them to market. No, that ain't happening. Not today.
yeah, not today.
And you know why it probably won't help? Second Amendment. You know what I mean?
There you go. There you go. Oh man, listen, picture
we'll
going
bring
into
it back
Chicago
around.
trying to get some slaves. Oh my God.
We'll bring it back around.
Yeah. So I mean, it's crazy though. It's crazy. A lot of crazy stuff going on out there.
Technetti Beats is right. He thinks the state should take more responsibility. Yes. Here's the thing: 100+ years ago, there was only so many people who were in government. That's it. And those people were serving because of a higher cause, because they wanted to, or an actual need. Now the government keeps adding positions, or like Mel was saying earlier, it doesn't always have to be a study, done by this Ivy League college. It can be a study done by the United States or government or whoever. The government keeps expanding. The problem is the government produces nothing as a product. As a business, the United States government has no product. The product is us and our revenue, our money. Once our taxes, which we'll call them 33%, once our taxes reach over 50%, you're going to see revolt in this country. When people can't work to put food on the table for their kids and provide for themselves, and they're working 40-hour+ weeks and can't get ahead in life, there's going to be an issue. There's going to be a problem.
There's already countries. I don't know if it's Denmark. I forget what country it is, where they have, a average tax rate of like over 50%, but they're saying everything is paid for and the rates are up as far as what people are getting paid, and it's good.
Denmark used to
Here,
be the highest. Happily, it used to be one of the happiest countries in the world, and it works under socialism. But the way they have it set up is, you can't. It's different. You know what I mean? It's so different.
Yeah.
Our social security system and the way things are set here is it's crazy.
It's a joke. Well, people don't realize that Bill Clinton, former President Bill Clinton, actually came out and said it. He said the problem was that Social Security was being robbed.
Oh yeah, Ben being robbed.
He said this on live television.
It's spent.
Yeah, it's spent. He said this on live television. People don't realize it. That they were stealing from Social Security. So, what's the point? What are we paying into? Where's the taxes going? What is this stuff going to? If you turn around and, we're still in $1 trillion of debt. People don't realize that when the internet came out and was released to the public, there was, a surplus. There was a major surplus.
And that kind of started from, let's go back to Reagan. That's really kind of where it came from.
Yeah, well, no, the technology was out there. Yeah. No, it was definitely out there. That, I mean, in the 70s, that technology was out, and it was released to the public after, I think it was a senator or somebody's family member was killed in a crash, or killed in a plane crash, and Reagan said, what's the sense of us having this technology, if it could have helped us, find people that that are missing or recovered. And then, many years later, it was released in full form to the public.
That's when Al Gore claimed he invented the internet.
I don't know what to tell you about that, but
Al Gore invented the internet, guys. Okay.
Well, it's an inconvenient truth. It's an inconvenient truth.
Well, yeah, the internet's been around for quite some time. I mean, I use it. I have a friend. I mean, how should I word this? I had a friend who was he's very into computers, and this was prior to anybody really being into me. When Radio Shacks were thriving, you know, instead of getting a car in high school, the first thing he did was get a new computer, and he would take them apart and build them before people were actually doing that, like on a massive scale, and understood the capabilities. I remember being online and sending what is now what we consider MP3s or MP4s, and I remember the bass coming through, like this computer, like nothing, like, you know, like a radio wave could enhance. You know what I mean? Like this was when you downloaded it, because people were still using cassettes, you know, a double cassette player to record music. I won't get into the legalities of that, but they were doing that. And then this new thing had come across with the internet. I mean, we're still talking dial-up days. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're using a phone line, and the clarity, and you could see on the old school EQs that worked. You could see how much bass was actually coming through at 20 hertz or less. You know, it was incredible. The internet was amazing back then, and the websites weren't there. You had the old bulletin boards, and even before I'm talking about before bulletin boards. I'm talking early 80s. You know what I mean? Early 80s. We were on the internet at his house, and it was something different. You know?
Yeah, definitely.
I should have started a Rebel State Sovereign channel then for something. You know what I mean? I wish I would have. I mean, I have some old
Rebel State superstar now.
I do have some old profiles. I won't get back into that. Groovy 18 says 1990s. Yes, I remember the 1990s clearly. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of us do. You know, you've got mail.
Yeah, AOL. Yeah.
Yeah, so many
That
different
dial
things.
tone.
Yeah, you know, dial up.
Oh man.
Take you 5 hours to download a song.
Longer than that. I mean, we were sending. I won't get into exactly the specifics of it, but we'll call it MP4s, MP3s, and GIFs. But we were sending music back and forth before that platform was even available, like, you know, some of the share programs and stuff. And we were able to do some really cool stuff. And this is before AOL when we were doing it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we were able to connect with even some dial-up modem. If you knew the phone number of any government agency, you were able to connect and actually check out some really cool stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I won't get into which parts of government. I'll say NASA for sure, though. I'll go ahead and say NASA. But you could definitely check out some stuff that NASA was doing, and that was awesome because the people that, I mean, you would be in a room and they just assumed because of you had to meet a criteria, you had to meet a certain level to be on that platform. You know what I mean? That they thought you were a PhD, a doctor, a lawyer. You know, you had to be someone who. And when I say, like, I'm not just talking about any lawyer. You're probably, you know, probably Supreme Court kind of area. These people were all people of expertise, and we were there just observant. You know what I mean? And doing our thing too. We were guests. You know what I mean?
There you go. No, definitely.
Yeah, I'll use the word guest because you had to have login codes, you know, and stuff. It wasn't as, the security was not as high as it is now. You know, it's pretty cool.
No,
it was very cool, man. It was very cool back then.
I mean, it's gonna get even crazier, man. I mean, people don't understand. There's stuff that I can't get into it, but there's stuff that's not even released to the public right now that you have no idea about. We'll leave it at that.
Right.
You know,
yeah,
like
there's a lot of that.
I'm not trying to get in trouble. I don't want to get arrested, you know, but let's just say there's things out there that's coming that'll blow your mind.
Yeah.
That'll blow your mind, you know. And I'm not the one that's gonna blow your mind tonight. You know, so just stay tuned. Stay tuned. Oh man.
All around back again said, get a trade under your belt. The sky's the limit for your income once you've established it. It takes a few years of hard work, but it'll start flowing. I agree. You know, I mean, like when there was an actual study done of protesters in the last few years, right? Mm-hmm. People, you know, from different colleges, university. We'll use some of the more left liberal, like I'll say some of the ones in California, Berkeley. You know what I mean? Like some of those, you know, how many students were actually out protesting, and then you have the ones from trade schools who were not protesting. You know what I mean? They're trying. I think they see a different change that they're making the change in their life. You know what I mean? That they want to see. They want to get established in life and get ahead and work and get a jump on others who may be getting a different education. You know, even at an Ivy League school, they're trying to better themselves in different ways. Where some of those people over there are bandwagon, we could say. You know what I mean? If you're looking at a walkout on whatever the issue may be, whether it was a president or it was a school shooting or whatever, that becomes a whole nother topic for another day. But a lot of the trade school people did not actually participate in a lot of the, you know, the protest, is what I was trying to point out there. Should we wrap it up, Mel? Should we wrap it up and say goodbye to all the good people here in the chat?
If you're ready, man. If you're ready. You know,
any last thoughts on the court rules that medical marijuana card holders should not or can't buy firearms?
It's deeper than you know, but it causes people to wake up. I mean, well, it should be a cause for people to wake up, whether you smoke marijuana or not. You know, whether you believe in the cause or not, you should be aware of your rights. You know, you should be aware of what it is that you're actually entitled to, or you fight for, or whatever the case may be. You know, because these issues that seem like they don't affect, you know, one segment of the you know, society, they actually do. You know, when you start looking up and you start saying, okay, they're taking away people's rights to bear arms, and next thing you know, it's amendments, you know, being taken all the way out, and you don't have the rights that you once had or the liberties that you once shared. You know that, you know, we the people have a say so. You know, don't think that you don't.
I agree 100%. That's why I brought up the 13th and 19th Amendment, you know?
Well, the 13th is important for me for different reasons, but I still say the Second Amendment is the most important, you know, as the actuality, symbolically as a black man, that's probably up there, maybe is equal to the Second Amendment from a historic standpoint. But it comes to a point where I tell people, you know, these rights and these things that people have fought and died for mean something.
Exactly.
And before you abolish them and do away with them, you know, or allow them to be changed, it's important to remember how far we've come. We fought a civil war in this country. A civil war. People have died and bled and sacrificed in this country for us to even have this conversation. You got to understand something. Back, you know, in the 1600s, 1500s, a conversation like this between a black man and a white man in an open forum was illegal. You know, so for this conversation to even exist has a direct connection and correlations to the amendments itself and the stuff that people have fought and died for. Now, however they're being implemented, that's your right to argue. But what can't be argued is that it's effective. You know, it's effective for, you know, where we are, where we will be, how far we've come. You know, these are things that are important, and you want to be careful to just disregard the rights because, you know, the political climate of the time is more correct and more sensitive to something, you know. So I don't know. That's my 2 cents on the matter.
I agree. You know, I have to agree on a lot of things that we've discussed tonight, for sure.
How long was we talking?
I don't know. I'm going to shut it down in probably less than 5 minutes. It's 12:55 a.m. our time. But I think the degradation of the U.S. Constitution or our Bill of Rights, because tonight I mentioned the first through 10. I mentioned those and kind of went into those about, you know, the legislative purpose, you know, even with some states. I even kind of went into those amendments of the Constitution of the United States and what those articles kind of represent. And I even went through some of the amendments, the 11 through the 27, you know, what those constitutional ones means, and how the United States shall not construe to extend any suit, you know what I mean, in law of equity to persecute someone, you know what I mean? and when the United States, you know, uses its citizens of another state or a foreign state, you know, and the complications that could get into that. I mean, it's mind-boggling. I think that a second look needs to be looked at this, because if you're taking someone's Second Amendment away, the Second Amendment is the way to protect all other amendments, period. And what I said earlier, I think will always reign true. You know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
if every other amendment that we have, right,
Yeah.
protects things that are current today.
Yes.
And when I say protects things current today, I'm whether it's wiretapping, whether it's videotaping, whether it's
Hmm.
whatever it whatever you want to put it at. The Second Amendment also applies to this. We're not talking about 18th century archaic weapons. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
If those other amendments portray to today, I mean, our founding fathers were never ever stupid, ever. You know what I mean?
Hmm. Some
And
may say ignorant though, but
yeah,
you know.
no. I mean, most of those were
Somebody
well
it's
educated.
ignorance. Ignorance is different from stupid, but you know,
Yeah, those people were well educated, and they put their mouths and their lives on the line. You know what I mean? When they spoke about it, they did it. Their actions.
Mhm.
We wouldn't be here today as a country if it wasn't for those people. They would all hung as for treason. You know,
Mhm.
under Europe, under Great Britain, under English rule. And today I see a lot of attack on the Second Amendment, whether it's just you know a 2016 discussion we had about a court ruling where medical marijuana card holders can't buy firearms, or if it's a conversation that we see where a van driver drives down a sidewalk and takes a bunch of people out. And I have to go, okay, now they're going to try to ban assault vans, assault. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like, is the van at fault, or is it the driver? You know what I mean?
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It's warning. The answer will apply to more than just this event. You know what I mean? That's that's
Yeah. Well,
that's the premise to it.
the important thing is for people to understand that everything touches everything. You may think that
Yes.
none of it is unrelated because, okay, the right to bear arms should have nothing to do with free speech and, like it's connected because if you can go after literally the most contentious thing in the amendments,
Yes.
then, who's to say you can't even bring back slavery? Like
Right.
who's to say in
Exactly.
the way that it was? So it comes to a point where you want to be careful, what you take away, and why you take
Yeah.
it away. I'm not saying that things doesn't have to be altered, the implementation of it and whatnot, and background checks or whatever the case may be. But to take it away, you're changing
Easily take it
things,
away. Yeah.
because it's easy to take away all the amendments then,
Exactly.
and that's when it comes down to, taking away people's rights as human beings, as
Yes.
citizens. I mean, and the reality is that people have fought for this stuff.
Right. And I see Molly Dolly. She said, "I've always looked at voting as a privilege. So many die for the right to vote. It's true, and so many women stood on the lines. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
For that right to vote. And in all fairness, all people. You know what I mean? We've all fought. Everybody's fought for rights that we have today, and some of those are not spelled out. But I
Well,
think under new laws, that may be coming, we may have to spell those out, unfortunately. And
well,
wait,
yeah,
give me 2 more seconds. Here's what I was going to repeat earlier. I said, if the First Amendment applies to radio and TV, right, and the internet, and the Fourth Amendment covers electronic wiretapping and video surveillance, how come, or how can, I should say, the Second Amendment only apply to 18th century firearm technology? You know, it doesn't. I mean, these idiots are trying to push an agenda on us for that
well,
particular fight that they want.
well. See, what people you have to look at it more metaphorically. People don't understand that the amendment is a direct correlation to the defense against the government itself, starting militias and just overtaking the people with rights that they fought, died for.
Yes.
Now, this is not so much so about that. Now, how people are abusing that law is another thing, but you don't need the guns to defend yourself against that. But since this is put in place, it is symbolic of how important folks are about it. They're willing to die, they're willing to kill for it. I'm not saying I agree with that, but it comes to a point where this represents so much more than the 18th century firearms, or 16th century firearms, for that matter.
Mhm.
It represents people's right to freedom, the pursuit of happiness, all that other crap. I'm not crap, but all that other stuff.
Mhm.
And when you take that away, it comes down to a point, what was the use in fighting for it? You know, because last time I checked, our major leaders and our business people and folks that are fluent in the society, who do they have protecting them? They have people with armed weapons.
Right.
Some of them do have assault rifles and people on roofs and snipers and stuff protecting them when they come into these cities and stuff like that.
We protect everything that we have with weapons, whether it's our money, transporting our money, our president.
Yeah.
Whether it's sporting events, athletes and
yeah.
These things, the weapons that are not being shown, those are a whole different category. You know what I mean?
But that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, the weapons that are not being shown, not everything has to have a bullet. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, definitely.
There's lethal ways to kill people without, and our government has lots of those. You know what I mean? Lots of technology that doesn't have to require a bullet to kill someone or to drive them insane or even worse. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Watch. I digress.
Yeah, I digress too. Well, let's call it a night. And like I said, I want to thank everybody for coming for sure. And Mel, thank you for being here with me for sure, man. Your insights are always welcome.
So are yours. It was a cool conversation. Like I said, hopefully folks gain something from it. You know what I mean? Like I said, we just wanted to get people to think, argue, question, explore, your rights, regardless of your country, your background, where you come from.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. I was reading the chat here. There's some funny comments and some true ones. Some statements made there.
You still live?
Yeah, I'm gonna end it right now.
Oh, okay.